بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبي الرحمة كاشف الغمة وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. We continue to look at the adab of dua from the treatise on the proper manners of dua by Shaykh Islam Zakariyya Ansari, and we saw in the previous adab that even when making dua for others, the sunnah is that one begin with oneself and then one prays for others, and that this is the way the prophets made dua. This is the way the prophets made dua. And likewise, it's from the adab of dua, as we saw, to say ameen at the end of the dua, whether one made the dua or one was listening to the dua or one heard the dua, one happened to hear the dua, and one should say ameen. And this applies also if one's listening to a lecture or a talk and one hears someone make dua, one shouldn't just say cool, it's a dua, one should say ameen to it. And there's great virtue in collective dua as well. There's a number of hadiths as we saw last week. So we reached the final few adab, which we'll close with today. Adab number 26. He says, أن يمسح وجهه بيديه بعد الدعاء. The 26th adab of dua is that one wipe one's face with both hands after dua. And this, the majority of the fuqaha held this to be recommended. That raising one's hands in dua is an established recommended sunnah. You don't have to raise your hands in dua. You can make dua pretty much in any way you want. So you're sitting back, reflecting on your porch, leaning back, hands behind your head. You can just stay that way and make dua that, oh Allah, I ask you for a healthy but hearty lunch. Fine. But the adab is that one raises one's hands in dua. And upon finishing the dua, to wipe one's face with one's hands. And we'll see the hadiths related to that. And the majority of the scholars said that this is praiseworthy outside of prayer. Obviously, within the prayer, one doesn't do any extraneous actions. And one of the things, so in the Shafi'i school, for example, the Shafi'is raise their hands for the dua of qunut, but as Imam Nawawi mentions, in the prayer, one doesn't wipe one's face with one's hands, right? And some of the Shafi'i said it could break your prayer, depending on how you wipe your face with your hands. But outside that, across most of the schools, they said that it is recommended. Even in the Hanbali school as well, it is mentioned that Imam Ahmad said it is recommended to do so. And there are those who are anti-raising hands. Ignore them. It's an established sunnah. There are those who are against wiping your face with your hands. You ignore them because even though there's difference of opinion, the position that you don't wipe your face with your hands is a minority opinion. Some will say Imam Ahmad didn't do it. There's two opinions from Imam Ahmad regarding that. And also because though there are a number of individual hadiths regarding this that are weak, as he explains, collectively considered together, if you look at because the evidence, you don't consider each evidentiary point just on its own, but you also consider it together. So Shaykh Islam Zakariyya Ansari says that that هذه الأخبار وإن كانت أسانيدها لينة, that the hadith about wiping one's face with one's hands after dua, though the individual chains of transmission may have weakness in them, may have lean. It's not, and the ulama were careful in they didn't just say it's weak and khalas, it's as if it's like a curse word. It says layyina. They have, layyin means soft. They're little, soft, right? Right? They're not solid. But, says, لَكِنَّهَا تَقْوَى بِاجْتِمَاعِ طُرُقِهَا. But, when you consider the chains of narration together, they are strengthened. Right? Which is why Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, in his book of the legal hadiths, Bulugh al-Maram, min Ahadith al-Ahkam, he deemed the hadiths regarding it to be sound, at least. But legal rulings are taken from the fuqaha. Right? The duty of the hadith scholars is to describe the transmissional strength of the evidence. Legal rulings are not made by the hadith scholars. It's like the relationship between hadith scholars and fuqaha is like the relationship between pharmacists and doctors. The pharmacist puts together the medication, can tell you probably more about the side effects and this and that of individual medications and so on. But who is it that prescribes the medication and who diagnoses? It's the doctor. Right? And in matters religious, right, it's the fuqaha who deem what the ruling of a matter is, not the hadith scholars. Just knowing the hadith, and also how do you consider all the evidence together? That's the duty of the fuqaha. So these kinds of things, one should not be confused. Someone tells you, well, the hadith of such and such thing are weak. Say Jazakallah khair, but you go and see what do the fuqaha say about this? What do the fuqaha say about this? The 27th adab, أن يحمد الله تعالى إذا عرف الإجابة ويشكره. The 27th adab is that one praise Allah if one comes to know of the outward response to one's dua, and to be thankful to Him. Of course, there's two levels of gratitude for response. One level of gratitude for the response to your dua is when you make the dua. وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ أُدْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Your Lord has said, your Lord says, call upon me, I will answer you. So the Prophet ﷺ explained, أُدْعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَنْتُمْ مُوقِنُونَ بِالْإِجَابَةِ. Call upon Allah with certitude of His response. Which is why Ibn Ata'illah said, مَتَى أَطْلَقَ لِسَانَكَ بِالطَّلَبِ فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ أَرَادَ أَنْ يُعْطِيَكَ. Whenever Allah loosens your tongue to ask, know that He has willed to give you. So at that level, one praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, what's one of the wisdoms when we begin the dua by praising Allah? Is out of thanks, to be appreciative for the gift of dua. And one has that certitude in the response. How and when, that's up to Allah. But then there's a particular praise and a particular gratitude when one sees the answer manifest. And there's two separate responsibilities. Thanking Allah or praising Allah is an action of the tongue. You say Alhamdulillah. Arising from an appreciation within the heart. But gratitude, which is only partially related to it, gratitude, shukr, is separate from praising Allah. Praise is with the tongue, arising from appreciation. But gratitude, shukr, is a state of the heart. It is recognition and appreciation of Allah's blessings, and then which entails expression of the requisite action entailed by that appreciation. Which is why the functional definition of gratitude, of shukr, is to direct each blessing towards what it was created for. So shukr, thankfulness, is not simply to say Alhamdulillah. That could be one part of gratitude, but the reality of gratitude, of shukr, is sarful abdi jami'a ma an'ama Allahu alayhi ila ma khuliqa min ajlihi. It's for the servant to direct everything that Allah has blessed them with towards what Allah created it for. So if one got a particular certification at work, or one passed an exam. One is not thankful just by saying Alhamdulillah. One is not thankful just by different expressions outwardly. Right? One has to recognize that this is a blessing from Allah. Because someone says Alhamdulillah, but you're like, I did it. That has nothing to do with shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because shukr begins by recognizing the blessing as being from Allah. وَمَا بِكُم مِّن نِعْمَةٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ. You have no blessing except that it is from Allah. And then to appreciate that blessing as being from Allah. And then it entails expressing the right response to that blessing. And that's the test of gratitude. To direct each blessing towards what Allah created it for. Which is why one of the adab of a blessing is to say, okay, what does Allah seek from me in this and through this? What does Allah seek from me in this and through this? Which is why Ibn Ata'illah says, the ignorant person, when they wake up, they think, what will I do today? Whereas the intelligent person thinks, what will Allah do with me today? That's much higher. That's sort of going from the lowest level to the highest level. A simpler response is the person who begins to have intelligence asks not what will I do today, but what does Allah seek from me today? And higher than that is what will Allah do with me today, but that's a separate matter. The 28th adab, the second last adab he mentions, أَلَّا يُخَلِّيَ يَوْمًا وَلَيْلًا مِنَ الدُّعَاءِ. The 29th adab is not to allow any day or night to be free of dua. It says لِخَبَرٍ وَرَدَ فِيهِ, because of dua that has come regarding this. Right? Amongst them is a dua, is a hadith that is related that every believer, male and female, has every day and every night an answered dua. If you don't ask, where's the answer going to come? And also he says, لِأَنَّهُ عِبَادَةٌ, because it's an act of worship. وَلَا يَلِيقُ بِحَالِ الْمُؤْمِنِ تَرْكُهَا, and it does not befit the state of the believer to leave this act of worship. Because it's the very essence, as we saw, of worship. If you don't make dua, your worship will be without its essence, without its very substance. The substance of worship is supplication. وَقَلُّ مَا فِي تَرْكِهِ يَوْمًا وَلَيْلًا أَنْ يَكُونَ مَكْرُوهًا. And Shaykh al-Islam Zakariyya Ansari says, the least that could be said about not making dua a whole day and a whole night is that it will be disliked. لِأَنَّ الزَّمَانَ يَوْمٌ وَلَيْلًا. He said because time is day and night. And وَمَا سِوَاهُمَا تِكْرَارٌ لَهُمَا. And everything besides a day and a night is a repetition of it. So if you've been called to make dua regularly, then what is time? It's a day and a night, and repeat it. So if you leave that, it's as if you're holding back from answering the divine call. Okay? And it's not legally obligatory to make dua, okay? But there is a clear dislikedness in it that can be understood from what's entailed by the call. But of course, an important point in not leaving a day and night in dua is the reality of dua is a need that you have from Allah that you express in asking. So just having a routine that one says without expressing need to Allah through it is not really a dua. So if you have a routine after prayer, that's not a dua. I just made a dua that's Quranic. I didn't intend Quran, so don't beat me up afterwards. Especially if you're Maliki. Malikis are if you're around Malikis, be careful, because Malikis are particularly careful about not quoting the Quran without, for non-Quranic purposes. They're very strict about it. And one has to be strict anyways. But here, this is an important aspect, that not to leave a day and night without making dua is not just saying du'as. Dua is need felt within, that's expressed in words of asking. So be very careful about that. And one of the ways, the ulama give a number of practical ways. One is that after every prayer, one should strive to make one dua in one's own words. To make one dua in one's own words. Another suggestion that the ulama make is every prayer, make one dua yourself for the greatest of your needs. In prostration, for example, or at the end of the prayer. And that helps express this reality. Another aspect is, before you make dua, pause for a moment and feel your neediness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before you make the dua. So those are three things. One is, after every prayer, at least have one dua that you make in your own words. And we'll have seen, it is not from the adab of dua that dua has to be in Arabic. And we have one more adab left, which is the 29th adab. Is there an adab of dua that it be in Arabic? No. It is from the considerations of dua that one choose. As part of one's du'as from the Quran, du'as from the Sunnah. But it's not a specific adab of dua that it be in Arabic. It's actually, if one had a choice of only making dua with a dua from the Quran or Sunnah, and if one made this dichotomy, or making a heartfelt dua, the heartfelt dua is superior to making dua from the Quran and Sunnah. Because this is the reality of dua. It's that which the neediness felt in the heart. This is only a quote without its reality. Of course, the most superior is to join between the two, but one should have at least one dua that one makes after prayer of one's own needs. In prayer, just have one of the goals of prayer to make, and one of the things in prayer, think about what's one high need that you're going to ask for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the prayer. And whether it's next worldly need or worldly need. Because if you're Hanafi, learn the fiqh of how to ask, because Hanafis are stricter than others in what you can ask in prayer. The final adab of dua that he mentions, أن يتخير للدعاء الأوقات والأحوال والمواطن المرجوة فيها الإجابة. The 29th adab of dua is that one seek out for dua the times that are most hoped for the answer of dua. And he'll mention in the next chapter what are times that are most hopeful for dua. We know prostration, for example, right at the end of the prayer, after prayer. A time that's ignored is the time of the answer of dua on Friday, which is either, and there's 40 different opinions amongst the early Muslims on what's the moment on Friday when any dua is answered. 40 different, we're not going to quote all of them, and he's going to discuss some of them in the upcoming weeks. But the most likely time for that, the ulama say, is either the moment before the khatib goes up to the mimbar, so you should be there before that, so that you finish praying, the khatib is rising to the mimbar, you make dua there, or between the two khutbahs, or right after the khutbah, and before the prayer. But those are three, there's a wisdom why certain matters of tremendous reward, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala left them open. Did not. But we know that the greatest reward of worship and devotion on Friday is to get there early. And they say the reward of getting to Friday prayer early is greater than anything you could ask for if you come late. Okay. And of course, there's this scholar who's in Medina. He was accosted by literalists who would give him a hard time. What's your proof for this? What's your proof for this? What's your proof for this? So the Shaykh would just say, please forgive me. Then the guy kept giving him a hard time. He said, okay, I want just one proof from you. He said, okay. He said, first let me ask you a personal question. He said, yes. He said, do you eat chicken? He said, yes. So what's the hadith proof that you can eat chicken? Do you eat eggs? He said, yes. So what's the hadith proof that you can eat eggs? And the man didn't know. And the hadith proof that is permissible to eat eggs is the hadith relating to the reward of coming early to the Friday prayer. Because the final reward before the angels close your books of records is an egg. And if an egg were not permitted to eat, it would not be a reward. Right? Which is a little anecdote, right? And there's many times that are blessed for response. One should seek them out. Right? One should actively seek them out. And states, right? Personal states and collective states. Difficulty, distress, hardship, blessing. There's inward states and collective states. Calamities, disasters. When there's bad weather, there's many situations where it's sunnah to make dua. Mawatid, there's certain places that are special, where we're encouraged to make dua. And these are, right? That is particularly hoped for dua to be answered, and we look at what some of those places are in the next chapter as we go through our work with Allah on the adab of dua. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those whose supplication is not a mere form, but it has a reality, and whose worship is not a mere form, but it has a reality. And the reality of our worship and prayer is the same reality that is expressed in our dua, which is need, urgent need for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد نبي الرحمة وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما والحمد لله رب العالمين.